Amanda,
And I'm Mel.
and this is the Road Back Home podcast. Hello, listener, and welcome back to the Road Back Home podcast. I'm Amanda, and today I have my friend Stephanie O'Sullivan on for a conversation that I hope you will enjoy. Stephanie is an interior architect. She is also the co-founder of So Scout, which is SO Scout, which is a curated location marketplace. And I've always been fascinated with Stephanie in terms of she is a curator. And I guess curation, I'm only realizing it now after us having had the conversation and me having had time to sit with it and really understand on what level is this so fascinating to me. And it clicked for me. If you go to the show notes, you'll see that with the episodes, what I've been doing lately is that I have been creating, like I've been writing reflections to go along with each episode, kind of like an article, blog post that kind of dives into the deeper, um, let's say, theme or pattern or nugget for me personally, but that which is also kind of a universal thing that will apply um, that may resonate with you as well. And I kind of give an exploration. I write a reflection around that, and then I have some work that for you to explore it as well if you want. But so in doing that, I realized that it is the art of curation is what fascinates me, and um, because Stephanie is a curator, I wanted to pick her brain in terms of like, what are you doing when you do that, and why? Like, why this and not that? Also, what it really brought up for me was the idea of having standards. And that is something that I have struggled with throughout my life. You know, I've actually had a fear of having standards. And really, it is a fear of confrontation. It's a fear of other people's reactions. It's a fear of saying no. It is something that has been a huge theme in my life that it's only clicking with me now. For so many years, I did not know how to say no, and I won't go too into it because I've written about it. But in how that impacted me in terms of authenticity, in terms of you know self-respect, in terms of really allowing myself to be discerning in life because I was afraid that, like, I didn't understand that you can be discerning without being discriminatory, and um, it has taken me a lot of years to find the nuance in that. But anyway, I'm realizing now after having had the conversation and many conversations with Stephanie and watching her over the years do her thing as a curator that what the deeper thing is for me. And it's about, having standards, whether it is for the aesthetics of your environment or whether it is for the things that you stand for, that you believe in, the values, the way that you show up, the people you let into your life, all of those things. And having, like, how do you navigate a situation where, something is on the table and you have to say no, you know, because it doesn't serve the bigger purpose. I just find that fascinating. Anyway, like I said, you can read more about that in the article. But for the meantime, here is my conversation with my dear friend, Stephanie O'Sullivan. So, Stephanie, you are very, very welcome to the Road Back Home podcast. It's great to have you here.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, you and me have known each other for a few years, and we've had several conversations over the years that always kind of go in, to me anyway, interesting places.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're one of the people I love talking to because it kind of can end up anywhere, and you have a kind of a curiosity or a mind that, to me anyway, that digs deep and thinks about things in ways that are probably different. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I only know that it's deep and different because people tell me.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
me. But yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
with you.
Well, funny enough, the very first time I met you, I'm just thinking of this minute, the
Mm,
very first time before we got to know each other, I remember feeling, would I say intimidated by you? But I had it never would have occurred to me that we'd end up being friends.
yeah, I'd say we just are very, neurospicy people find each other,
Mm,
and
mm,
you know, have probably experienced the world very similar in similar ways. So I would say that my very small group of friends were all quite similar in that way. Yeah, but from the outside, I would agree with you. We wouldn't have, on paper, I suppose, we would not have looked like we would be pals.
mm. Yeah. You always carried yourself to me as somebody with a lot of confidence,
Yeah,
you
um,
know?
that's definitely a learned way, and something that I definitely don't feel confident inside. Um, I probably more I'm confident now, but back then a lot of it was sort of to fit in and stuff like that. But definitely have my insecurities.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, no doubt.
Yeah,
But yeah, I remember just like my very first impression. It's so funny how you can have an impression
I
so like
know.
there's somebody with like really high self-esteem, who
Oh,
like wouldn't with who wouldn't deal with somebody like me kind of that's me projecting
wow.
my insecurity onto you. It's funny, isn't
Mm,
it?
mm,
How we can carry ourselves one way
mm.
and our internal experience be something completely different.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting.
Um, so the other thing as well is that, as we got to know each other,
Mm,
we did a bit of coaching together
yeah,
for a while. When you were still, let's say, in the corporate
mm,
world,
yeah,
and we had this kind of a journey where you, I witnessed you embrace your makeup,
yeah.
how you see the world, how you experience the world. You were very much a square peg in a round hole.
Mm,
And we kind of went on this whole, like we had this thing where we're like, you're a circle and they're square,
yeah,
and there's just, that kind of way. Whereas it was almost like I'm such a bad square
yeah, yeah,
to be to begin with.
yeah. That's true. I mean, it's funny, I was working as a creative, but in a very corporate world, and it's hard to explain to someone, anybody, you would say I'm an interior designer, and immediately they think, it's just must be great. It's very creative and you're doing lovely things. But it's not so lovely when it's in someone else's, you know, world of rules, regulations, and everything's just anything good about it has been sucked away because it's just it's like a cult almost. It's you're following other people's paths constantly, and you're following other people's rules. Our clients were huge tech corporate clients, so from every angle, from every approach, it's all sort of ripped back to something really just basic, black and white. And I'm just not black and white, um, in many ways. So if it was fine for a while, I was 7 years in the one in Dublin, and prior to that, I was 7 years in London in even more corporate environments. I'd worked in about three different um, practices there, and again, they were still all corporate because we were basically designing offices. And so, um, prior to that, I was in Galway, and my first interior design job was lovely. Small practice. We were doing houses and hotels. It was just before the recession. And that was my first time in, a career role. And it was lovely. And I had an amazing mentor, and she saw instantly in me something. And I wasn't scared. I just did what was asked of me, and I asked the questions and I came up with solutions. And she really nurtured that and taught me. So when I left that after 2 years, I mean, I had no choice. We had to, everybody was moving to London, basically. There was no work. I went straight into that corporate environment having absolutely no idea. And then it just kept going. And then suddenly I was in a position where I was like, I'm actually in hell. And it just
Yeah.
crept up on me.
Mm. Yeah. And one of the things as well that, from knowing, it's funny how sometimes like there's so much of let's say witnessing you over the years has been on
Mm.
Instagram, let's say, right? And one of the things that has fascinated me about you is your aesthetic, not even your aesthetic, your eye, like the way that your eye has introduced me to beauty that I probably wouldn't have seen before, or I have really loved following you as somebody who almost is, I wouldn't say is teaching me about beauty, but is showcasing to
Yeah,
me beauty in an architectural sense that my eye wouldn't necessarily be
yeah,
drawn that way. But
yeah,
when I look at your feed and your projects and everything, and
yes.
you know, and then also your honoring now that you're at where you're at, because when we first met and when we were first working together, the
Mm.
theme that came up over and over again for you was conformity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And do you remember we had this big conversation as well? Maybe you don't remember the details, but about the school uniform even.
Yeah, well, no, I remember it all. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And that kind of conformity and the how we should be and how we shouldn't be,
mm.
and also being, because as you have said, the neuro spicy, now that you are, is it autism that
I
you?
have AUDHD, so it's autism and ADHD. But I
Yes.
mean, it's useful to be able to say that, but it's not a definition of everything. It just covers a huge spectrum of things that I've
Yeah.
never been able to identify exactly what they are. So it's useful now to be able to go, okay,
Yeah.
that's why or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so much of that conformity, I think, was probably masking.
Well, I know now. I have the terminology now,
Yes.
and everybody's a little bit more informed now. Obviously, it's a massive topic. So when you say masking now, everybody knows what you mean.
Yes.
Um, I think when we were first talking, I had no idea. I had no
No.
idea that what I was experiencing was burnout, meltdown,
Mm.
sensory challenges. Yeah, it takes on a physical toll. So as you get older, what I've learned is that, you know, the body just can't hide it anymore.
Yes.
So you could be masking, from a very young age, which most girls do. And at some point, the mask has to come off, whether you like it or not. And so it
Hmm.
starts to manifest itself physically. So you feel it, you just feel like everything's wrong. Your body changes, it can end up, with skin conditions. It can end up, but it's a physical, visceral reaction to your environment and the life you're in because it's just so not made for you. And you've put up with it for as long as your body can possibly do. And then
Hmm.
suddenly you get to an age where it can't do it anymore. And it also, unfortunately for women, coincides with perimenopause. I mean, forget it. There's no hiding it. And that's where you see a lot of women having breakdowns and um, just locking themselves away, not able to cope with anything. It's years of masking. And
Hmm.
what we didn't realize at the time when we started talking, it was probably 2018 around then. Um, you know, that's kind of what was happening, but we were talking about it in different ways, but it was still similar to what was happening. Yeah, so it's kind of the
Hmm.
start of it.
Yeah. And then we took this idea,
Mm.
this theme of conformity, and we kind of like rebranded you in
Yeah,
terms of like, it's like, okay, it's the conformed creative is not, is so constricted. Like it's just, there's no freedom in
it
that
doesn't
for you.
even
Like,
make sense. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, but also what we were doing is we really kind of like embrace the intelligence of
Mm,
your creativity
mm,
and your way of seeing the world
Yeah.
that you ended up becoming the informed
Yeah.
creative, which is your Instagram handle.
Yeah.
And you still have that all these years later. Does that mean something to you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very representative of like a turning point, a realization, which has its pros and cons. You know, when you start to realize what's actually happening, you get angry. There's a grief process. It's everything, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I still love seeing the term the informed creative, you know. I still, and I mean, I don't do a huge amount with my Instagram anymore compared to what I used to, but it was a creative outlet for me at the time in a corporate environment, and that's kind of
Mhm.
how I embraced that. And you know, you're not the first person to say you know, the things that you used to share photos of were things that I would walk past and not even notice. You know, things like how the light would come through a space. Um, anything. I
Mhm.
could post a picture of a drain and see something in it. Um, and I before I would have been scared to share that I see something interesting about that drain. But
Yeah.
then I became the informed creative and I just decided screw it, like I see something in it. I don't care if I'm putting it here because it's an outlet for me to put it in. If someone likes it, then they like it. I actually don't care. I suppose that's what an artist is. Like of
Mhm.
all the things you can be in the world when you're an artist, you're creating for yourself. And if someone wants to buy it, then that's a bonus. But you know, you're creating for yourself. So I suppose that was an outlet. And then times where you'd have like imposter syndrome, I might delete something and then I'd have a little word with myself and go, "Oh, for God's sake, this is exactly why, you know, you're not happy." And then you just
Yes.
keep going.
Yeah. One of my most memorable, let's say, memoirs that I've read, and I say my most memorable memoirs as if I read a lot of them. I don't, but I've read a lot of things, let's say, and
Mm,
books over the years. But there's a book, and it is the autobiography of Joni Mitchell. It's called Joni Mitchell in Her Own Words.
mm,
And it is actually written by a journalist that, let's say, would have been Joni Mitchell's in her sphere. But it's anyway, it spans over the course
mm,
of 30 years or something like that.
okay,
The journalist's name is Malcolm Maram. That's her name.
okay,
That's the journalist's name.
okay.
And it's the book is composed of a series of conversations
Mm,
recorded over three separate occasions, but spanning the years between like 1970 something and the 2000 and something.
yeah.
Um, and then the book was published in 2014. But what comes through in the fullness of time through these conversations is that it is a critique or even a reflection or on the creative process and the artist's duty to be a sentry
Mm,
of the creative process and of what wants to come through the creative process that is not conform,
mm,
that isn't going to necessarily conform or make sense
yeah,
or be easily packaged and marketed.
yeah.
And Joni Mitchell, as a result,
Mm,
kind of like Sinead O'Connor, and
yeah,
funny enough, like all the women. So, because, there's this very specific kind of creative intelligence coming through the feminine
yeah,
psyche and
yeah.
that that is rejected or, that is kind of like denied by the patriarchal
Mm,
structures that end up when the women insist on
yeah,
honoring that, they become difficult, labeled
yeah.
as difficult.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've been labeled it more times than I can remember by employers, but funnily enough, they would do it with a smile, you know, they would say like you're I remember one of my bosses in New York was like, "You're busting my balls," you know, but he still knew that I was brilliant at what I was doing and you know, yeah, we got on well. And I generally would get on well with, you know, my bosses and things. There was maybe one or two where they we clashed, but that's fine, you know. I'm not supposed to get on with everybody, but I do recall many times being labeled in sort of different ways as difficult.
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I asked why a lot.
Okay.
Why are you asking me to do that? And I didn't know till recently that that actually offended people.
Right.
They take it personally. They think like there's something wrong. I didn't know that till recently. I was always asking why. Like, I'm happy to do it. I just want to know why.
Okay. Yes. And they feel like that they're, something about them is being
Yeah,
questioned or
yeah.
undermined or whatever, or they're
Mm,
not being asked to defend themselves, which is very interesting because
mm,
in terms of communication, like how you can be coming from when you meet that defensiveness,
mm,
it's kind of a lack of awareness that you would be bringing to the table. So the awareness I know that you bring to the table in
mm,
terms of, well, and this is what also fascinates me about you as you are evolving
mm.
as you have become Soul Scout.
Yeah.
And and in the process of building your own, first of all, claiming that space, and building your own space and documenting that, in Cole Lane House
Yeah.
is the
Correct.
Instagram
Yeah.
for that. Something that has fascinated me about you and that I just think is so innovative, and I don't know if this was deliberate or not, you can tell me,
Mm.
is that I see what you're doing now is that you, I think, are ahead of your time in terms of seeing a living space as something that can also essentially have a job. Like your home has a job,
I
you know?
mean, yeah. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't deliberate, but then I saw an opportunity and, you know, um, couldn't understand, why it hadn't been done before in the way that we were approaching it. But I'm passionate about storytelling, personality through environment, and how that's turned into a service almost. So I I'm just so interested in how people live, right? First of all. So I have neighbors. I just think it's so interesting. There's on my avenue, there's a run of houses that were all built identically.
Hmm.
And when you look at each interior of that property, they're so different from each other. I find that I just can't I just can't come away from how interesting that is. It's just like how each person has done something different to the interior of each house, not even with any sort of strategy, just by literally their personality and how they want to live. And then there's the span of generations and how that's different. And I find that really fascinating. Like, I just love going into their houses and I'm poking around and I'm pointing at things. I'm like, where did you get that? Where did you get that? I'm like a child, I want to
Hmm.
know, I want to know. And I find they actually love sharing. So
Hmm.
I'm asking questions because it fascinates me. They're answering the
Hmm.
questions because they're just so glad to be able to share, oh, my father actually made that clock, so glad you like it. And then I'm like, what? They made it. How old is it? And then suddenly you have this story, and that's just one thing. So what to make a long story short about how Soul Scout came about was I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I knew there was
Hmm.
something. And now I see it. I see that what we're doing is we're bringing together personalities in a physical environment to help creatives elevate their brands, right? So instead of trying to sell your product by going to a studio and creating an environment, we're now providing these environments that each have their own personalities already there. And so you could take whatever it is, whether you're a fashion designer or a jewelry designer, or maybe it's a large production and you need a background for a TV commercial. Um, we are passionate about storytelling and getting across that personality of the home that you can use now to elevate your brand. And, our house has been used over 50 times, right? Which would tell you how can one house be used so many times for it to not be, repetitive. But I can honestly tell you, when you see them side by side, the campaigns are all completely different, and they're
Hmm.
still the same space, but they've
Hmm.
each found something about that environment that works for what they're trying to say. And so if they're authentic to their story and they're authentic to what they're trying to get across, it doesn't matter that that was used for another jewelry company. It doesn't matter that that property was used for something else. They've got a story to tell. They've found something within that environment that will help that story be told. And so they ride that wave. There's a million ways to tell a story.
Hmm.
So I didn't know what it was that I was creating. I didn't know, but it is definitely something that I'm so passionate about and interested in, even as a small child. Just I don't know how to explain it, but like my aunt would say, she'd bring me to like a DIY hardware store as a toddler in a buggy, and that was my favorite shop to go to. I'd go there before I go to a toy shop. And so that'll kind of give you an idea of where I see things. That was far more interesting to me, she said, and I would sit and watch people, and I would sit and look at things, and I would take in and absorb my environment constantly. And that's just the way I am. So everywhere I go, I see an opportunity in a space. And I want to know what the story is behind it and who is it. And I spend hours looking up properties that are appearing in a movie. It's like, where was that shot? I want to know everything about it, and I'll go down big, big hours on the
Yes.
internet looking for it. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of becoming a thing now. Whereas I was watching, do you know what it was? It was just like
yeah.
a reflective piece on Shawshank Redemption,
Oh,
and they were saying about how they shot it in a real jail.
mm,
And essentially, so again, it wasn't a mimicked, like a bastardized version of jail created in a studio.
yeah.
It was an actual character in the movie, the jail itself, the
Well,
building itself.
this is it. I say that all the time. Is like the location, the environment, the house. Like, how many things do we know where we can associate the movie or the thing? What is it? Home Alone. Everybody knows that house from Home Alone. There's just something that it's probably the biggest character within the entire creative process in itself. Um,
Yeah, it's fascinating.
mhm,
I remember, no, I don't even have to remember. I was at a talk a couple of years ago by the poet David White,
yeah,
and he talked about the word genius
mm,
and as the word genius being a derivative or whatever of, is it like location,
okay,
place. And also then this kind of like ancestral in Ireland anyway, and it's not just in Ireland, any kind of tradition has this kind of like um, relationship with place, and environment and landscape as being a container for
yeah,
something um, much deeper. So it's very interesting to when you think about this, like the way you might passively watch a movie,
yeah,
and it isn't until somebody
points it
says,
out.
actually lets you in behind the curtain and
Yeah,
says, well, no, we use this jail as an actual character in the movie, that you're like, holy shit, I never even knew that. I didn't even know the impression that was having on me or the impact it
so
was having on the movie.
so true. Yeah, it is a huge part of it. Um, and particularly now, so the creative content industry is going to completely surpass the film, the traditional sense of film and TV production. So the creative content industry is the fastest moving and biggest revenue making for the speed it's at the moment. And is when you look at the predictions, they see the creative content industry just going further than the traditional TV and film production can. Um, and it's actually become even more important. So as a creative working in an environment where you're creating um storytelling for brands, and look at it, look at the way it's being used. It's no longer just a pretty picture. You get the whole story of how that got to that point, and that's all part of the advertisement. You know, everybody needs to know the story behind it. They like to see the behind the scenes. They want to know what's happening. Some of the biggest things that have happened to a lot of TV series has been the bloopers, you know. So people are sitting down and actually watching 3 hours worth of bloopers on YouTube now. So the people are fascinated by that creative um
Mm-hmm.
process that goes behind the end result. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
for us right now, we coming back to So Scout, like we did not know. I just thought it was going to get a lot of interest from film and TV productions. I just thought that's the way it would go, and it has not gone that way at all. It has gone completely the other way, and our, you know, all our bookings are creative content bookings. And
Amazing.
that's not to say we don't want the film and TV, that's absolutely fine, but just the market has told us what it needs, and so we're providing that. Um, and it's getting busier. And with the age of AI, and we're massive AI fans and tech fans here, it's interesting because the the creator is the most resistant to the AI change, and predict economists are predicting that the creator is going to get even more powerful because AI is going to take over so much that the feelings and the empathy and all that sort of stuff that you cannot teach AI to do is going to become even more important to being a creative creator. And so our systems will take on the AI and give us the words, right? So that's why I love AI. I have so many things up here, and AI helps me get it out. But it's
Mm-hmm.
never going to replace, and in fact, it's going to help creators go up because there'll be more of a demand for the real part of that, which informs the AI. But it's going to become even more important.
Our time is coming at last, in other words. It's about time.
Especially for women. One of the most amazing things I heard was about 2 weeks ago. I was at the Tech Founder summit, and it was all women. It was all women in tech, and there was incredible speakers, but two of them really stuck out. One of them was Kelly Vero, and she was the creator of Tomb Raider and Halo 3, multiple other things, but she uses those because we can relate to those at a time where women just didn't work in tech or were high up in tech or weren't even taken seriously. Hasn't actually changed, right? So only 1% of women in tech, women founders in tech, still get funding, right? So it's still
Um,
hugely problematic. And then the other speaker that stood out to me was, I didn't even know we had one, but she's the AI ambassador for Ireland, and her name is Dr. Patricia Scanlon. And basically, she was kind of one of the closing speakers. And she said, you know, the most exciting, like, I mean, everything she said was amazing, but one of the most exciting parts of what she said is um, in a world where women tech leaders are not being taken seriously and not getting funding, um, while their male counterparts are just being thrown money, right? So, same sort of tech model and ability and ideas. It's just the money's going to the male counterpart, right? And a lot of that is to do with sort of the coding and just the way the tech world is that, you know, you have to rely on a lot of male investors, and AI is taking all that away. So she reckons next year we're going to see a massive drive and a massive increase in women in tech because we won't need men's money anymore, because we won't need coders anymore. And she said we can now use AI to build what it is we need without the massive funding from, you know, the investors that we once needed. Um, and she said she says it's going to completely change the landscape. And the thing is, like, AI has been around forever. And, you know, I think the first conversation around AI was in 1965. and it was actually an Irishman.
Wow.
And um, she said that it was actually, what did she say? I had it written here somewhere. Oh yeah, she said the infection point of AI, it sounds like The Last of Us or something, but the infection point of AI was 2012. So that's when things really started changing, right? So that was when it actually started to make changes, was 2012. And it has just taken off. So it took from 1965 to 2012
Wow.
to start being taken seriously and developed. But then from 2012 to now, she said it has completely and utterly changed everything so fast, like so fast. And she reckons by next year, like it's going to have it's going to be part and parcel. It's going to be like when the internet first came out, you know.
Yeah.
We couldn't even fathom living without it now. And I remember people at the time going, oh, that's awful, you know, we don't need that, and it's not safe, we don't know enough about it, you know. And it's
Mm,
actually changed people's lives and it changed the world. We're
mm,
at that turning point now where we're going to see how AI in a very
mm.
positive way, and people are scared of it, but it's going to
Yeah.
empower so many people that didn't have a voice. Uh,
100%. There's a lot of people, like, let's say, as you say, they're critical of it, or else they're out there shaming the use of it.
yeah,
And in my cynical mind, I'm like, well, I don't cynical is the word, but
yeah.
I'm like, well, just because you're scared of it and you're framing it now as a moral issue, but they
Mhm.
go out and they be like, "Ugh, I'll never use AI. That you're just not using your brain. I'll continue to use my brain. Thank you very much." And then they get in their car and drive on to their next location, not their horse. You know what I mean? And I'm like, like we've been here before, people, like
And I've
there was
said,
a time. Yeah, there was a time when there was people like, you can keep your motor car, thank you very much.
yeah.
I'm going to keep my horse. We all just get lazy. Like good luck. Good luck at taking your horse to the fucking fair in Cork, to the whatever, to the gig. I'll see you next Tuesday.
I know, but the advantages to it is just insane. And there's going to be a time of when it's going to be gimmicky, which it is right now, where all these stupid memes and deep fakes and all that stuff. That's just part and parcel of how, like, that's, to me, it's the equivalent of when you could buy a ringtone for your phone, right? We were all like, yay, let's buy a ringtone. Do you remember? And now we're just like, I don't even want to hear my phone, right? So it's the same.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's just a novelty right now. So we're all going to make stupid AI versions of our cat humanoid, right? We're all going to make stupid fake versions of us as babies doing the podcast. If I see another one of those, it's like, oh my God. Right. So let's just get over, let's do what you need to do, everybody. Have your fun, have your ringtone. You're going to be mortified in 10 years.
Somebody sent me, not somebody, several people have already sent me. So my dad played a character in Father Ted. He was Father Fenton Stack, and now there's an
One of my
AI out
favorites.
there
Yeah,
of the
one of my
baby.
favorites.
It's baby Father Fenton Stack, and it's
Oh
just the
no.
weirdest. Oh, it's the craziest thing, like. Um, but yeah, and then somebody who shall remain nameless sent me an sent me a video of a fucking polar bear, a baby polar bear that had jumped onto a fishing rig and was now hugging all the fucking fishermen and smiling at the camera. And this person's like, "Look at this! Isn't this amazing? My God!" And I was like, "That's AI, chicken." And they were just like so freaked out because they were like, "What do you mean?" So I
And
can
so
understand the reservations.
completely, that's making a mockery, right? So that's just making someone feel like an absolute tool bag. But I would say on the upside of those things is it's making you a critical thinker, right? So for
True.
instance, something popped up on my Facebook. And it was this finding of dinosaur remains from 72 million years ago. Now, first of all, 72 million years ago gives me the absolute, even thinking that something existed 72 million years ago, right? And then there was an image of bones like just under the surface. And I was like, this can't be real, right? This can't be real. So I went and so who's going to have the most accurate information about what really happened? How many, so you go to National Geographic or whatever. So you go to the source that you know has to be right.
Mm.
But I've been forced to do that now, and that's a
Yes.
good thing.
The fact checking, yeah. Well, funny, the person who has sent me enough AIs for me to say, babe, that's you know, like that's AI, like
Yeah.
spiders can't really talk. Um no, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They are now for the first time, um I wouldn't say fact checking, but at least they are
Critically
second
thinking. Yeah.
guessing. They have 100% because
Yeah.
they know now that you just cannot take whatever you're seeing at face value anymore.
But it took something absolutely ridiculous, like a panda hugging the fisherman, to start
Yeah,
questioning things. So,
yeah. And
all
smiling.
and smiling. But if you think about it, so much, 90% of what we're thrown, right,
Mm,
isn't factual. So,
mm,
all these stories about tarnishing Meghan Markle and how unhappy Harry is, like that's been going on for
mm,
centuries, right? None of that's actually real.
mm.
And nobody's thought to even question it.
True.
It's taking something ridiculous like a panda hugging the fisherman and smiling at the camera to start going, hang on a minute. What else are
Mm,
we being lied to about?
yeah. Or the baby peacock one. The baby peacock meme.
There was another
I
one with
think.
the giraffe climbing another giraffe's neck. Are we okay, guys? Are we? Now, they're all
Ah,
ridiculous. They're not harmful stuff.
yeah, yeah,
So look,
yeah.
we can laugh.
We can laugh, and we do. We often do. You and me do send each other, these, like, it's part of our shared sense of humor is this, like, sending all these really funny things.
It's my form of
Um,
communication.
yeah, and coping slash coping.
Okay. Okay. Correct.
Um, so this, getting back to Soul Scout, and even
Yeah.
before Soul Scout, your own journey with your home and all that. And when I saw that you had started to, it was doubling as a family home and also a location.
Mm. Mm.
Um, So, this kind of like your creative intelligence, the informed creative, the fact that you started to own your vision, your intelligence, your
Yeah.
knowledge, and also, take yourself, not that you weren't taking yourself seriously as a professional, but like you were taking yourself seriously enough to walk away from the constraints of corporate world and go out there and do your own thing.
Yeah.
Um, but also the business acumen that you've brought to it is just mind blowing to me. I see this kind of like where did that come from? This idea that the multifunctionality of a home, because in the era that we're walking into now,
Yeah.
or we're in, not walking into, in.
Yeah.
I'm not a homeowner. I don't own a home. I can't even imagine. If I owned a home at this point in my life, there's no way I could even afford it. Like, it has to be more than a home now at this
Yeah.
stage. So when I alluded earlier on and said, like, your home has a job,
Mm.
um, that's kind of like how I would see it. But I'm thinking to myself, is this how we all need to start thinking in
Mm.
terms of our living spaces in order for them to be sustainable? Um, ha- like, should we be thinking in terms of multifunctionality here, or how do you think? Is that the wrong way to think? Is it multifunctionality, or how do you express that or
No,
characterize it?
I wouldn't describe it as anybody going into a property. Like a home is not the same as a house, right? So a home is a feeling, okay? So I hate all these shows where they're coming in and judging people's homes because how dare you, first of all, call it home? You can't judge it. Judge the interiors if you want, judge the architecture, whatever, but don't call it a home, to be judged. I think I think for me it comes back to the whole storytelling and personality. And what I what I want people to do is just think about being true to themselves, right? So when they spend the money on a property, to look at it as how they're going to live in it and how they're going to grow and how they're going to change, and accept that you've got multiple personalities in this space, and you're creating an environment, whether you've got kids as well, like what's the safe environment. And then it's like, if you're doing that as true to yourself as possible, it's like, how can that, if you were interested, not everybody wants to open up their home. It's like, if you have been true to yourself, you'd be surprised how many people want to invest in that.
Say that to me again now.
So if you have been true to yourself and how you want to live, physically, visually, how what you want to surround yourself with, if you are being really true to yourself and putting in all the stuff that you love, right? You'd be surprised how many people will pay you to put their brand in that situation, because it's so authentic, right? And it's so different. So if I take, for example, like all the properties we get sent into us, right? We don't take them all on. And
Hmm.
sometimes I can't even tell some of the homes apart from the other ones, because there's no authenticity in them. That's
Mm,
not to say that the homeowner isn't authentic. Of course they are. It's that they probably aren't being 100%, you know, true to themselves. They probably aren't putting the artwork they really want in there. They're probably being heavily influenced by what they're seeing. And therefore, we get quite a lot of self-built homes that all look the same. Um, and there are times where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I saw that house already. Is this a different one? That's true. And then you get the homes that we have on our website, which are bursting with individualism, a personality from the owner, someone that's really just gone for it with an unapologetically about themselves, regardless of what anybody else thinks, regardless of what the other house is doing.
yeah,
And they're the ones that are getting booked. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Even in your own home, being authentic to yourself has
yeah.
repercussions.
Yes. Okay. So when I'm teaching art journaling, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm not teaching art in terms of like fine art. I'm teaching self-expression, you
Yeah.
know? And what I say to people, because a lot of the, will people will come in with a block because they're creating with an audience in mind.
Yeah.
They're creating as if there is a judging panel.
Yeah.
And because of that, they are betraying, or,
Yeah.
they're not really, they don't have their eye on what's wanting to come
Yeah.
through. And so, what I've said to,
Yeah.
when in my classes, what I say, there are two types of art, there's art for sale and there's art for self.
Yeah.
And it's not that the art for self, like the art for sale is the kind of art that we have been, prior to the internet and artists
Yeah.
going online, because it was just like artists were, the galleries were in, where artists got to, they were the middlemen as such, galleries. And so the public's only engagement with art was once it's finished and in a frame and on a wall.
Mm.
And so once it was opened up to me, let's say I wrote something down here, like the man behind the curtain. It's kind of goes back to something
Yeah.
earlier we were saying, like once that man behind the curtain, that curtain is pulled back a little bit to see that the humanity behind it,
Mm.
um, that gave access to me to
Yeah.
the creative process
Yeah.
in a way that I thought prior to that my process was wrong, or the very fact I didn't, in fact I didn't even
Yeah.
know that there was such
Yeah.
a thing as a process. I was so focused on outcome,
Totally. Totally.
and it was this big mysterious gap in the middle
Mm. Yeah.
that when you are loyal to yourself, that gap becomes animated in a way that that's where the magic comes
Yeah.
from.
Totally. Um, it's it's so hard to say when we see a property whether it's right or not. Like so many people say, would you be interested in my home? And I don't even know what it looks like. And what I say to them is, it's impossible. They say, what are you looking for? And it's like, it's really impossible. It's something I can't put my finger on. But it's the same way as, why do you like that piece of art and you don't like that piece of art? There's something that stirred something in you about that you related to, that you can see. And then the other one is like, I just can't relate to it at all. It just does nothing for me. I wouldn't want to be around it. So when you're looking at the properties, there's an instant understanding, oh yeah, someone has been true to themselves, authentic, unapologetically. There's personality here. There's times where we've taken them on where we just know it's a handy one to have, and it'll get booked because it doesn't have a huge amount in it and people can kind of dress it themselves, but they wouldn't be as high a rate. You're paying to use someone's curated life.
That's fascinating.
That's where the
That's,
value is. And I've had homeowners say, oh, my furniture cost an absolute fortune and they're using it in the scene. We should be paid more. And I was like, that furniture could be secondhand from, for 70 quid somewhere. It means nothing. That means nothing. It's the personality and the character and the story that the space itself is giving. The variety of what it's giving is what people want. So the producer is much going to part with their money much more for something that is something you can't put your finger on, the same way expensive art is, right? What is the magic about that art that people can charge thousands for, that other piece of art doesn't? It's that's what someone wants to pay for, right? So it doesn't matter how much something else. Every piece of furniture downstairs in my house is something off eBay or something I've carted down the road on my back that I came across on the side of the road, or it belonged to my grandmother. My mother's piano is there. I actually will wait till I find that, then buy it new, because I feel that it's much more interesting. And when I've just stuck to that, that's why our property became as popular as it did for the shoots. It's it's just a magic to it, and
mm,
I've used the analogy of the Harvey Norman, it's like they're one of our clients, so I'm not bad mouthing them, but I don't want a home that could just be a Harvey Norman showroom.
mm,
You could have
mm,
pieces for Harvey Norman in there if you want, but there has to be something about it that is curated from you. Even if you don't realize you're curating and creating, it's just there. Even the way you've hung your hat on that hook on the side of the fridge, that's interesting.
mm,
Because hooks normally go in the hallway. Why did you just decide to put it there? It's actually kind of cool, and it's actually given us an opportunity. It's little things like that. It's all those things you mentioned about my Instagram when you said, like, I didn't even notice those things until you pointed them out. They're all the things that creatives notice. And
yeah.
they're the things that are hard to create in a studio. And they're the things that are hard to make authentic. But they just exist in someone's home that just does it without even thinking about it. They're just, I need a hook there for my fedora because I like a hook there. And guess what? That little decision is why the property was booked.
Mm. Oh gosh, I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
after just like, I so get that in terms of, yeah, the who are you,
Mm.
um, who are you doing it for, and also something about agenda there,
Mhm.
when you try and force something, you know,
Uh,
um,
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. It's like effortless. Um,
mm,
sometimes you go, I can't describe, I could go into anybody's home and I will never ever judge, any of the decisions made. And even if it wouldn't be something that would be something I would choose, I'm still fascinated as to why it was chosen. Um, and I still like it.
Mm,
There's something for everyone, and I guess it's just the understanding of like, no matter what decisions you make in any part of your life, when they are authentic and true and what you want, not what's expected, um, it it it's more expensive. Okay, it has more
mm,
value.
mm. Yeah. So, like coming back full circle,
Yeah,
this idea of self-trust,
yeah, yeah,
owning who you are
yeah,
and, the question of why, like knowing your own why.
yeah.
Like, why would I choose that, thing there instead of
Mhm.
this one here? That, um, like, understanding that for yourself and knowing that if you see beauty in it, that's enough.
Yeah, yeah.
That
That's
doesn't need to be ratified.
100%.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
that's it. It's just knowing that that decision is enough, and you don't have to explain yourself.
yeah, yeah,
Unfortunately, you know, at the moment, we're having to explain ourselves just to get funding to do what we know is going to benefit so many people and be something quite unique and successful. And the way I'm describing what we do to you is not how I get to describe it to people that I need money from to back me. I have to turn it into tech jargon and venture capitalist jargon, and I have to find a way to sell it. And that's me having to go back into the conformed role to get the informed. So we're on a slow trajectory because we just haven't wanted to conform, right? So we've found other ways of getting what we need to do done, without conforming. And it's just taking longer.
yes. Because it's the path, not taken, or it's the path, it's not the path of least resistance,
Yeah,
which kills the art as such.
exactly. So every time we've been told to do something so that we can get something, we've gone, no, that's not for us.
Yeah. And you know what? That's it. That is the thing, like being true to that.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that we laughed about the last time we met and we had coffee together was like
Mm.
when you stand by something that you find
Yeah.
beautiful and you wear it out there. Like recently, I walked into a shop recently with a pair of shoes on that I love.
Yeah.
And a grown man pointed at my feet and went, and laughed at my shoes. And I was just like, what? And he
Yeah.
says, clown shoes,
Yeah.
right? And I thought to myself, like, it's just as well I don't care for your opinion.
Mm.
Because if I did, I would not wear the shoes that bring me joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know, I would not do the things that brought me joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see that all the time. You've had that so much, haven't you, online where people will just kind of come in and shit on try and shit on your your thing that you're sharing. You're like, "Isn't this beautiful?" And they're like, "It's just a fucking plant."
I know. I shared something once and like someone was like, that reminds me of, but I do think that's a very Irish thing. Um, in many ways, it's like a blind boy talks about it a lot and just makes me laugh so much. It's like trying to get from the shop to your car with a bag of toilet roll in your arms in Ireland. They just come out of everything. Where's your bag on? Is your gun on it? What's happening with your arse? Watch him with all the toilet roll. Like, sorry,
I
can
I
I just get to my car without a running commentary? It's so Irish. It's like there was a thread, I think Today FM did it, and it was like, people that get names for doing one thing once.
yeah,
And there was one girl, she said, she was like, she lived in the middle of nowhere.
I have it here. I just Googled it because I knew exactly what you were going to say. This is what she says. Props to anyone who
Yeah,
tries to be fashionable in Ireland. I wore a red beret once in Waterford and someone called me Super Mario.
So, and then it sticks. It just sticks. There was oh, I forget her name, the comedian. She's very funny. She said there was a fella in her town and he had one leg longer than the other and he was known as quarter to two. Like I had to even think about that, but she, she did the action out. Oh yeah, I get it now. Um, it just
Yeah.
there's so
Here's
many.
another one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Right? Here's another one of my favorites from that thread.
yeah.
I wore a suit with a matching tie and pocket square to my first day of work at an advertising company. I thought I was going to be in Mad Men, I guess. And the staff sent around and signed a communing card for me with a fiver in it.
And do you know what? The reason I know it's a very Irish thing is when I lived in London, I had that sense of humor because like I was just ingrained in me. I didn't always get received with, laughing. It it offended people, so I was kind of like, yeah, okay. Maybe that is more of an Irish thing. It's just so yeah, you do get people just comparing things that you see beauty into something really mundane and ugly, and they'll go, "That
Mm.
reminds me of," and you go, "Oh God, thanks for ruining that." Yeah, I did not see it that way. At
Yeah.
our house
And
was compared to car park, it's all concrete. So it was on a TV show and all the comments. And I went in and I responded to every single one. Not in a bitter way. I just said, look, thanks a million for your comment. We actually love it. We just wouldn't have wanted a normal home with painted plastered walls. And then they kind of went, oh yeah, sorry, didn't mean to say it that way. Just it wouldn't be for me. And it's like, it's all right, just reminding you that the person that lives there and designed it and put their heart and soul into it is here, right here beside
mm,
you.
mm,
Um, and
yeah.
most of them were very apologetic to that,
Mm,
being compared to someone said, oh, things are really bad in Dublin now where people are living in a toilet block.
yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
digging for something, like how far do you need to go just to say
Yeah.
that? Like ridiculous. Someone very cold, needs some plants. All right, love, thanks. Just moved in, but yeah, I'll get onto the plants and
Yeah.
we'll
It's
warm it
just
up.
that casual drive-by,
Yeah.
criticism of, like, oh gosh.
It's,
And it could knock the wind out of your sails. And I know that it does. Like I know somebody who won't drive down fucking Main Street Killaloe because somebody once said something to her about it. And that's like 20 years. Like it's like never again. I will never ever
yeah.
or wear the shoes. Like I also know somebody who got given the wrong change once. And never frequented the shop again. Like the only shop in the village kind of a thing. Like we'll drive to fucking Nina for milk. So like the woundedness, you cannot afford to be that fragile in the world. Like we have to learn how to, like be uncomfortable. Like somebody sees you wearing a pair of shoes that brings you joy and then they call them clown shoes.
But
It
like
can't
you,
be over.
I mean, you've taught me that in that situation, what what prompted that man to be in a position in his life where he felt that he A could say that it was perfectly okay to say that, and B be so offended by a pair of shoes.
I know. And get this, the man's fly was down.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean? Like, have you looked at yourself?
So, like, I have found that the most critical people don't obviously look in the mirror, and I mean that in many ways, not just physically, it's like, I don't understand how you think it's okay for you to say that.
Yeah, like glass houses. Yeah, there is that. There's a lack of, again, it brings us again back to the awareness. There's
Awareness.
a lack of
Yeah.
awareness. And that lack of awareness, like it shows, but also it's robbing you,
Yeah.
you know?
I love the homes that, um, if anybody saw the home I'm talking about, they would be like, how do you like that? But it's the ones that over the years have just been added to. So they'd be like, right now, they'd be like your grandparents' generation, and they're probably the small little workhouses around Stonybatter. and they've done nothing to it other than like just fix things as it's required, right? They don't care what it looks like. It was just such a loving family home that they just like, okay, that carpet burnt over there by something that came out of the fire. So they just cut it out and they put in a new piece of unmatched carpet, right? And then there was mold on some corner. So rather than get the whole thing decorated, they just made something. Someone's uncle just made something and put it in the corner. I love that. Like, it's just like,
Mm,
there's just something so funny and unique and gorgeous about that. And what annoys me, and we talked about this the last time I met, is how we're not taught, particularly as Irish people, the importance of maintenance, right? So
mm,
everything in Ireland just gets left to ruin. And
mm,
when people buy these old houses, rather than just try and nurture what's there and try and keep it original, just rip out the heart and soul, right? You've got property developers that just buy up loads of houses and they rip out the heart and soul. I'd prefer if you just left the burnt out kitchen, please, instead of ripping it out and putting in that hideous, heartless, white, shiny kitchen and shiny tiles, which no one's going to be able to walk in because they're going to kill themselves on it. So can we just take care of our stuff? Can we just
mm.
do that?
See the beauty in what's already there.
And just look after it.
Mm,
Just look after it.
mm,
Care enough to look after it. All the empty houses, we know we have a housing crisis. We know everybody constantly complaining about all the empty houses. Um, People saying tax them, fine them, whatever. It's like it's too late, right? It's too late to do all that. We should be taught from a very early age the value of stuff and the value of what we have and just look after it and don't let it go to ruin.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again.
But anyway, that's why that's passionate about what you do, and I hope that, people listening, that if it does nothing else, this conversation is that it gets across the message to be courageous
Mm.
enough to own what you see beauty, like validate it for yourself, like say, look, this is what I find beautiful.
Yeah,
And it may not be a an agreed upon beauty,
yeah,
but I'm going to love it and I'm going to treasure it. And I'm going to, whether it's build on it or bring it out, like what's that, like tease out the, like I'm going to enhance it. I'm going to be the sentry for this, the caretaker of this,
yeah,
and I'm going to honor it
yeah. And it
and
doesn't,
believe that.
and
Yeah.
that should be enough. You don't have to prove it. You
Yeah.
don't have to record it. You don't have to put it on Instagram. You know, for it to be worthy, you don't have to do anything other than just believe in it
Mm,
yourself and
yeah. And fuck the trolls, if they don't, if it's not appreciated by others, well then that's their work.
mm,
It's not a reason for you to put the shoes in a box
yeah,
and never wear them again. What a dishonoring of the part of you that chose them in the first place because they brought some joy into your life. Wear them more.
yeah, I agree. I agree totally.
Well, Stephanie, thank you very much for being here, for coming on and
Thanks for having me.
having this conversation with you. Any final last words that you'd like to share?
No, just like keep doing what you're doing and keeping people accountable and inspiring others and being funny, even if it comes from a place of trauma like myself. If it makes people laugh, it doesn't matter, you know. One of the things I learned from the tech summit, would you believe? I can't remember her name, but she was amazing, and she was saying like we are literally just that's how long we exist, right? We are barely on this planet in our lifetime, and just live authentically in that tiny bit of time and just fuck everybody else and just be you, because in the grand scheme of things, we're nothing. I am evidence that when you just live your informed, creative life and don't conform, whatever that looks like, um, things will happen. Things will happen for you. And if you
Mm.
stick with it, it takes longer.
Yes.
It takes longer because it's the path of most resistance, but it does
Mm.
get you there.
Mm. Yeah. And what's resisting it is bullshit, not you.
Yeah.
It's not your path that's bullshit. It's the resistance that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And our time is coming.
Yeah, our time has come, hopefully.
Cool. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you.